Beautiful day here in Bristol. Thank you so much for being with us here on First Take. Sun is shining. We are happy to be here with you. We appreciate you all. Skip Bayless, Stephen A. Smith, I'm Molly Karam. Gentlemen, how we doing?
I'm lovely. How y'all doing?
I'm lovely too, Stephen A. How are you?
I'm just lovely. Let's get to it.
Let's roll.
Oh, on that note, so you know what it's all about. Last night, the Thunder of the Spurs on the brink of elimination after stealing Game 5 in San Antonio and taking a 3-2 series lead. OKC trailed by 6 late in the fourth, but ended the game on a 13-3 run. Russell Westbrook was 1 assist shy of a triple-double with 35 points, 11 rebounds, and 9 assists. Stephen A., what was your takeaway from Game 5?
My takeaway from Game 5 is that the Spurs looked old very, very quickly. And LaMarcus Aldridge came up small. I mean, he hasn't been getting it done the last 3 games. Certainly hasn't been getting it done in the fourth quarter of the last 3 games. Meanwhile, Russell Westbrook just reminded the world that there are 2 superstars on the Oklahoma City Thunder, not just one. Kevin Durant didn't have the greatest game, even though he hit some big shots. But Russell Westbrook was absolutely sensational. And regardless of the 8 turnovers, the fact is he showed up when he needed to show up. He made big plays down the stretch. His speed, his athleticism, his aggression definitely stole the show. There were a couple of lapses, obviously, where the San Antonio Spurs thought a whistle would be blown and sort of relaxed a little bit. And Russell Westbrook, that engine constantly churning, just kept going and made a couple of plays down the stretch where San Antonio lollygagged or they thought a whistle would be blown, and that didn't happen, and that ended up being the case. I definitely believe, and as I'm sure Skip Bayless will accurately bring up, he got fouled by Kawhi Leonard. That should have been a foul called by the officials. Russell Westbrook should have been sent to the line for 2 free throws, giving San Antonio a last shot at a 3-pointer to tie and send the game into overtime, as opposed to Russell Wilson being in position and ultimately converting a 3-point play. That's absolutely true. The referees blew that call, but it doesn't mean that the San Antonio Spurs did not blow the game. There were times where they had it in hand. But in the end, what did I say, Skip, weeks ago when we were talking about the San Antonio Spurs? I said my fear, even though I would pick them in 7 in this series because I thought both teams would protect their home court, other than stealing one early, they would protect their home court in the latter part of the series. What did I say? At some point in time, a Manu Ginobili, a Tim Duncan, or Tony Parker, the big 3, it would come down to one of those age-old veterans because Popovich is going to rely on them. Tony Parker hit a nice shot from the right wing. Outside of that, he missed his last 2 or 3 shots that could have closed the deal. He wasn't able to deliver. Kawhi Leonard wasn't the one taking the shot. LaMarcus Aldridge, who had been missing most of his shots, wasn't the one taking the shots. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put him in. I think LaMarcus Aldridge is big time. Don't get me wrong, as a talent. But he seemed a bit jittery as the pressure waned in the second half of yesterday's game, particularly the fourth quarter I'm talking about here. He seemed a bit jittery. He didn't seem to be himself. Wasn't following through with his normal shot. Didn't look as fluid as he normally looks. And in the end, what it comes down to is this. Oklahoma City, as I've repeatedly stated, has big-time talent. What we question is their ability to play together, sometimes defensively, sometimes offensively, overall as a cohesive unit. But the talent is there. The talent showed up last night when it counted most. And unfortunately, San Antonio's big 2 of Kawhi Leonard and most importantly, LaMarcus Aldridge did not when it counts. And as far as I'm concerned, the results are what they are because of it.
I'll go back to your first point. I'm going to give Russell Westbrook his props today. He did a lot of very good things to win that basketball game. Mainly, to me, he just played harder and wanted it more than all my Spurs did, including, in the end, Kawhi Leonard. I give you that, Russell Westbrook. But as you pointed out, or just sort of swept under the carpet, Mr. Smith, Russell Westbrook had 8 turnovers last night, part of 20 Oklahoma City turnovers that included 5 from Kevin Durant. Late in the game, in the final minute and a half of the game, both Westbrook and Durant had huge turnovers that reopened the door for my San Antonio Spurs. One with 1:27 left by Russell Westbrook, just an unforced error. And then late in the game, 29 seconds left by Kevin Durant. Here, Spurs, we give you the game back on your home floor on which you went 40-1 in the regular season. My Spurs should have won that game 10 different ways. They were up 6 with 4 minutes left. I don't want to dwell. I'll get to this later. But you're right about LaMarcus Aldridge. He still has too much Portland Trailblazer in him. That stage got too big for him. He's still not a full-fledged San Antonio big game primetime Spur. Not yet. He makes the most money on the team, but he hasn't earned his, so to speak, Spurs just yet. And last night, you're exactly right, jittery. 3 for 12 in the second half when my Spurs were up 13 midway through the third quarter. If he just makes 2 or 3 of those little open, and Stephen A., we're talking about open jump shots now. We're not talking about highly contested hand and face jump shots. Open little, for him, bunny shots, like free throw shots. He only started this series making 33 of his first 44 shots. But when the money was on the line, game 5, do or die, no, shrank. Now, here's my point. And the Russell Westbrook lovers and the Spurs haters won't want to hear this. There were actually 3 blown calls. Bless you.
Bless you.
Thank you.
3 blown calls in the final minute of that game. I'm not going to go so far today and say my Spurs were robbed because they had too many chances to close their own deal despite this. But I will say that the refs helped cost my Spurs that basketball game. You missed the most egregious one with 54 seconds left. Danny Green is running around a pick set by Steven Adams. And Steven Adams clearly, and he's got some goon in him, he steps back with his left foot and clearly flat out trips Danny Green, if we can see that right now, tripped him. And Danny Green goes sprawling into Kevin Durant, who gets a foul call. Stephen A., 54 seconds left. The game is tied at that point. It should have been immediate offensive foul tripping on Steven Adams. Instead, Kevin Durant, who's about as lethal a free throw shooter, especially under pressure, as I know in the league, he clearly, easily steps to the line, makes 2, and all of a sudden it's 92-90 Oklahoma City. Ball should have been going the other way with my San Antonio Spurs. Would it change the dynamic of the game? I don't know. Wouldn't have hurt my Spurs. And then, to your point, 6 seconds left. My Spurs are in big trouble, and Kawhi clearly intentionally attempts to wrap up Russell Westbrook. How can you not call that foul, number 1? That's the first one, but it was double jeopardy because, to Russell Westbrook's credit, he continues to rage on to the basket, and as he goes up to dunk it, LaMarcus Aldridge just kind of waves at him because he thinks the play's over. They all just sort of went half speed, and he waves, and they go and 1. So instead of Russell Westbrook having to shoot 2 free throws with his team up 1 point, he got to shoot 1 free throw with his team up 3 points. And he made it, and the game was over. Okay, I'm not saying out-and-out all-time robbery, but I'm saying those are 3 blown calls in the last minute that dramatically impacted my Spurs' ability to win that game. Your thoughts?
Well, what makes it most, first of all, you're absolutely right. I did miss it. I should have brought up that tripping of Danny Green because it was clear, it was flagrant, and there's no way on earth that should not have been called. And what's really, really most annoying is that it's the last minute of a contest. The game is tight. It's a postseason game. It's pivotal. Those are moments where NBA officials simply can't make the kind of mistakes that they made. Missing the call against Danny Green. And then to know, you know good and well that the Spurs have to foul. So that's what makes the missing of the foul call against Kawhi Leonard, them making that call, that's what makes it most egregious because there are situations where you could nick a guy in that situation and an official will make the call because they know you're trying to intentionally foul because you want to send them to the free throw line. You're hoping that they miss a free throw, but in the event that they do that they do make both free throws, you're still in position to tie the game if you hit a 3-point shot. How can professional officials miss something so obvious that everybody and their mother know is coming and you're looking for To miss that is incredibly egregious. So that's why I'm not going to mess with you today about the Spurs, because I'm watching, and I don't care. You know me. Even though I picked the Spurs, I want OKC to win the series because I want to see Russell Westbrook against Steph Curry. But at the same time, and Kevin Durant against Steph and Clay and those boys. But at the same time, fair is fair. And I look at San Antonio right now, and I'm saying there's no way on earth that those two errors in the last minute of a semifinal series in the playoffs should be missed. It's inexcusable. There's no excuse for it. The NBA should be all over those officials on a day like today, because those are big-time misses. Having said that, again, LaMarcus Aldridge was jittery. And I want to say something here about, listen, we all know Greg Popovich to be a great coach. We all understand that. But let me tell you something. It was incredibly glaring yesterday. Look, the San Antonio Spurs just missed shots because the plays that Greg Popovich was calling, the offense that they were running, the kind of shots he was looking for, they were getting them. Tony Parker had open shots. LaMarcus Aldridge had open shots. And here's why I blame LaMarcus Aldridge more so than anybody else for this particular game, Skip. Tony Parker ended up shooting because he had to. Yeah. Because LaMarcus Aldridge wasn't. If LaMarcus Aldridge was making shot, you and I both know that Popovich would have had his number called. And Tony Parker and those boys would have kept feeding him. But not only was he missing shots, look, we know basketball, all right? No disrespect. We all know LaMarcus Aldridge is a stud. He can play. He was the premier free agent last summer. We get all that. But damn it, he was jittery. It's just that simple. He was. He looked a bit nervous. It wasn't that he was missing shots. He looked tight. Palms got sweaty, and other parts got tight, and he just looked like the moment, as you would say, was a bit too big for him. It is just that simple. That is why Tony Parker ended up taking the shots that he took. Danny Green hit 6 3-pointers. You can't ask for more from him. Plus, he stripped Kevin Durant on a key turnover in the last 2 minutes. Danny Green was playing defense. Kevin Durant didn't have a great game. He played great defense. He played great offense. He did more than his job. Tony Parker was asked to do more than he should have been asked to do. It was supposed to be LaMarcus Aldridge and Kawhi Leonard who stepped up. Kawhi did in moments, just wasn't consistent. LaMarcus Aldridge was completely absent when it counted most. And if they lose this series, that is what is going to be most memorable as it pertains to the San Antonio Spurs. The fact that he looked a bit jittery when it counted.
6 for 21 for the game. Won't get it done, especially at home. Now, to your Kawhi point, we're going to speak later in the show about LeBron James, can I say reticence in sort of anointing Kawhi as a superstar player. We'll talk about that later. I had some reticence after last night. I don't get this, Stephen A. Smith, and I'll tell you why. In the first half, Kawhi Leonard made 8 of 13 shots. And you know and I know, in the second quarter, he went Russell Westbrook on the Thunder. He took the game over. He literally yanked the game out of Ibaka's hands. Remember that play in the second quarter? It sort of just switched the momentum of the game and slammed it home. All of a sudden, the Thunder had no answer for Kawhi Leonard. 8 of 13. In the second half, he takes only 8 shots and makes 4. In the fourth quarter, he takes only 4 shots and makes 2. So on the 2 key possessions, when the Thunder have said, here, we reopen the door, we hand you the basketball. First Westbrook, then Durant. Right on schedule. We've seen them do it before, and they did it again. They were the Oklahoma City blunder, not the Thunder, the team that can't close the deal. But my team has to go then take advantage. And Tony Parker, how many times have you heard me over the years talk about this, Stephen A? Dribble, 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 dribble. Tony's not too old. Tony can still do it. You've seen him do it in this series. Dribble, 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 dribble. Nothing. I don't know what they're doing. There doesn't seem to be a plan. And to your point, the shot clock is winding down. One time he just blew the shot clock, but on these 2 turnover opportunities, he wound up taking a rushed, indecisive jump shot that had no prayer, didn't sniff the rim, glanced off the side of the rim. Where was Kawhi Leonard on those 2 plays? I want it in his hands. Really? Well, seriously, sometimes they just can't stop him from getting to the basket or the free throw line.
I agree with that, Skip. But again, I have to look at the Spurs, I have to look at Greg Popovich. I have to look at LaMarcus Aldridge more importantly. I ain't worried about Greg Popovich. I look at Greg Popovich because I know about his greatness. But the flip side to all of it is this, Skip. Kawhi Leonard shot 50% in the second half. He had 4 of 8 shots. He had 2 of 4 in each quarter.
Okay, not enough.
So he should have been more aggressive. I have to believe if he was not, that has something to do with what Popovich wanted done. When I look at LaMarcus Aldridge, 2 for 11 in the fourth quarter over the last 3 games, really?
Terrible.
That's just embarrassing.
It's terrible.
I mean, my God.
No,
and you averaging 40 in the first 2, and then all of a sudden you fall off the map. And I don't even have a problem with the 6 for 21. I have a problem for when it occurred. If you went 0 for 15 and hit your last 6 shots in the fourth quarter, well, then you know what, Skip? You were just off. But it's the fact that he's on, and then it gets tight, and then all of a sudden you can't make shots. Well, that's a choke job. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened, but I'm saying that's how it's looked upon. And when you consider also the fact that, Skip, it's almost sacrilegious to say this, Tim Duncan's done. It's over. I mean, 1 for 6, 28 minutes. The legs are just not there anymore. The legs, and then the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And in this case, it's the legs. It's the flesh on his legs. It's just weak. It just seems like it ain't there.
Yep.
And so when you look at it from that perspective, that puts more of an onus on LaMarcus Aldridge. You got to know, because look, the offense is evolving around you right now. You're the modern day Timmy. You're the dude you're the power forward with the mid-range game, the unprecedented mid-range game. This is what LaMarcus Aldridge brings to the table. And so right now, with them being on the brink of elimination, if they want to force a Game 7, I believe in LaMarcus Aldridge's skill. I don't think it will usurp that of the combination of Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook on their home floor in all likelihood. But if the Spurs are going to have a chance, LaMarcus Aldridge we know what Kawhi Leonard needs to do. That's a given. But he does so much defensively, Skip, and he's efficient enough offensively that I can sit there and say he is what he is. If you get Kawhi Leonard to be Kawhi Leonard, then you'll be fine. LaMarcus Aldridge has to step up and be that dude. Tim Duncan cannot come to his rescue. It doesn't appear to be the case anyway. I don't want to ever rule out Tim Duncan, but it just looks like Father Time has kicked in his door. LaMarcus Aldridge has to take over. He cannot disappear in the fourth quarter, and he has the last 3 games.
I can't compare those 2 players, what roles they play for the team and what Tim used to be versus what LaMarcus is.
Offensively, you can.
Yeah, a little bit, although, well, let me just say this. I told you this the other day. If you go back and look at the stats of the Clippers series 1 year ago, it was obviously in the first round. They lost in 7 games at Staples, Game 7. Tim Duncan was the best Spur on the floor every night of all 7 games. He was good to the last drop because he made big shots down the stretch that looked like they were matching CP3, who finally made the runner-up over Tim Duncan's defense. The problem this year is lately he's hurt his good knee. He's got 2 bad knees now. I'm not sure that it's Father Time has knocked or rapped on his door as he turned 40 years of age. I think his knee is shot. Both are now shot. So he can still play defense. He can still protect the rim. He can still keep Russell Westbrook occasionally from getting to the rim, just on savvy alone.
Yeah.
But I'm with you.
But when I say Father Time, that's what I'm talking about. Same thing with Kobe. It wasn't that all of a sudden he's spry, he's got a spring in his step, and then he gets old. Yeah. Injuries kicked in, and then the body couldn't recover. It's the same thing with Tim Duncan approaching 40. Skip. He's older now.
Okay,
and when I say Father Time, I'm not talking about his skill. I'm talking about his body has drastically deteriorated. That's all I mean by that.
All right.
It is what it is.
Okay, and now to your point, and I give you credit for this. You did say going into this series, or if not a month ago, you feared that Pop would ride the big 3 too much down stretches of these big games like this. I hear you, and you can laugh if you want, but Boban Marjanovic has been a force during the regular season. He should have been playing some minutes of this series because the Thunder crushed my Spurs on the backboards last night.
54-36.
Yeah, how about 15 offensive rebounds? It's hard to beat a team when you give them 15 more chances than they deserve to have. So in this
That's
case,
true.
like Boban, if he played 12 minutes, you don't think he could bang with Steven Adams and take a little pound of flesh from him?
You're not going to get any argument from me, but understand what it's a byproduct of because of the play of Tim Duncan. I mean, if you still had Thiago Splitter, I would be in support of him playing because he's a bigger body and fresher legs. Listen, Tim Duncan can't be on the court for you for 28 minutes right now.
He can't.
He just doesn't have the legs for it. He just doesn't have the leg. And he seems to know it, even though he's very non-assuming and all of that other stuff. Is it just me, Skip? I'll ask you as the ultimate Spur lover. Did Tim Duncan not look a little depressed to you being out there? He didn't seem listen, I know he always has his head down and he's focused on doing his job. I know that. He's great. He's the great Tim Duncan. It's just like it's the same thing I saw with Kobe from time to time. When you know your body won't allow you to do what you know how to do. It's a devastating reality. When it hits you, it's like, damn, I just can't do this anymore. And that's gotta hurt. And that's what I saw last night. That's what I saw.
Depression, but I saw a couple of hints of embarrassment when he had open sort of basket attacks where he usually Duncan would at least laid the ball in the basket, and he couldn't even get home to the basket.
But that's what I mean. Yeah. And I'm saying the residual impact of a play like that, it's like, damn, I used to be able to do this. This was once upon a time money. That's all I mean by that. I mean, I don't want to be hyperbolic in terms of depression, but I'm just saying it's just knowing your greatness and knowing you know what to do and can't be able to do it. Okay,
everything you just said, I hear you, and my Spurs were up 6 at home with 4 minutes to go. And
blew it.
And Oklahoma City turned the ball over 20 times. And listen, you can look, I'm not criticizing Russell for this, but this is good for me. This is the formula I need to beat the big two of Oklahoma City. I need Russell Westbrook to take 27 shots to Kevin Durant's 21. I'll take that. I know he was great in spurts last night, but I'll take that. That's my formula. 20 turnovers with 27 shots by Russell Westbrook. I got a chance because the nuclear weapon is Kevin Durant, who looked a little tired in the fourth quarter and was not involved. What was he, 1 for 4 in the fourth quarter? He wasn't a factor. So when he's not a big factor, what's that?
He didn't need to be because he had Russell.
I got you, but I'll take Westbrook. I'll take on that challenge more than I'll take on Durant just getting hot from 3 or pull-up jumpers. So it's a game on a, if I may, silver and black platter, if I can use the Spurs colors this morning, because it was right there. Please, no.
Skip, bottom line, are the Spurs done?
No way are they done. They're going to win in 7 games. I'm sticking by my pick.
All right, Spurs in 7. We will discuss that in the next hour. We're going to get into that subject. But tomorrow night, it is Game 6 at the Thunderdome between OKC and San Antonio. Our coverage begins with NBA Countdown charged by Dew at 7:30 Eastern on ESPN. Meanwhile, though, coming up next, Dwight Howard joined the crew on TNT last night, speaking about his future and commitment to the game. We'll react to what he had to say after the break. Stay here. We're just getting started.
I think you like me like that.
So that was potential free agent Dwight Howard answering questions on TNT last night about his commitment to the game. He also told TNT he has not made any decision on his future. Skip, what was your takeaway from Dwight's comments there?
Stephen A., I watched the whole thing live. I think you did also.
Yes, I did.
I found the whole interview frustrating. I found the whole conversation off point. I didn't get this theme about people think you're a bad guy, Dwight. And then he was responding, yeah, people think I'm a bad guy and it hurts me and it ticks me off. Stephen A., I could be wrong about this, but I don't know anybody who thinks Dwight's a bad guy. I think they think he's too nice of a guy, that he doesn't take basketball seriously enough, that, to use his term that he used last night on TNT, that he's too laid back, that he doesn't have one drop of Russell Westbrook in him. We don't sense any killer instinct. We don't sense any drive, any rage to win. We sense a guy who's extremely gifted, who's put up very good numbers, but has never been obsessed with maximizing his potential. So it's like Dwight still doesn't get it. It's not about being a bad guy. It's about being a really good guy. Where's the killer instinct? Where's the will to win? Where is the rage to work so hard that you improve your low post scoring, which he's never been able to improve, and he's got ability more than he has shown. Why in the offseason don't you get better at scoring, especially in the fourth quarter in the low post with moves or shots? You've got ability that has not ever been maximized. And obviously his free throw shooting has never improved. Yet all along he's made $167 million in his 12 NBA seasons. If he says yes to the Houston Rockets right now, he can make $23 million to play in Houston next year. It's his call. You know, and I know he probably wants to once again test the free agent waters because he wants one more max deal. So at age 30, Dwight Howard on potential loan, because everybody looks at him and says, gee, if only we could get the most out of Dwight. Maybe we could win a championship with Dwight. He just might get another max deal and another, God knows, $100 million. So to me, in the big picture, at the end, Charles said, I'm paraphrasing what Charles said, but he said, let me explain to you how TV works. When you're great, we love you and we think you're great. But when you're not great, you get killed on TV. No, that's not the way TV works. That's the way life works. That's the way sports as an entertainment vehicle works. Because we all expect so much from Dwight that we've never quite seen before. And when we don't, and he's making $167 million over his 12 years, people are going to criticize him. Does he really care about it or not? And that's what it's almost like Dwight deluded himself into somehow thinking, oh, people think I'm a bad guy. That's not the point. The point is no one thinks that you care enough about the game that you were sort of born to play with your physique and your athletic ability and your leaping ability. Simple as that.
At the risk of Charles Barkley wanting to slap me upside my head and Kenny Smith wanting to call to check me because, you know, I love them both. Those are my boys. You're absolutely right, Skip, in terms of how you dissected what transpired last night. This notion that Dwight Howard is a bad guy, I didn't know what the hell they were talking about.
Well,
nobody's ever said that Dwight Howard's a bad guy. A matter of fact, they've said quite the opposite, because quite the opposite is true.
Yeah.
Dwight Howard's a very good guy. He's a good young man. He's decent. He doesn't have a malicious bone in his body. He's not trying to hurt anybody. That's not who he is. That's not who Dwight Howard is. The problem with Dwight Howard is that when people see, and Dwight Howard has to grasp this, they also leaned on the notion that you got to be you. Kenny Smith was talking about you got to be you. Well, far be it for me to question a two-time champion whose brother is a big-time mentor to me, so Vincent Smith, who I love dearly, helped teach me how to play the game of basketball, and I've idolized Kenny Smith all my life, and nothing about that changes right now. That's my man. But where I disagree with him in that respect is that when he says you got to be you, well, wait a minute. Yeah, but no. On one hand, you got to do what makes you comfortable and what helps you play the best that you can play when that's the priority. But when you are a franchise caliber player, you are also called upon to lead. And if the imagery or the persona that you give off doesn't serve to inspire and galvanize the troops around you, then you might have to modify it a little bit to make sure that they don't have a reason to question your commitment to excellence, especially comparable to theirs. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
In other words, if you're a guy, if you're Dwight Howard, you're the $88 million man, you arrived in Houston, you're the cornerstone of the franchise along with James Harden. It's y'all team. So if you've got guys looking at you, and not saying that was the case in Houston, it was in L.A. with Kobe, but not necessarily in Houston. But when you got guys looking at you and they're saying you're very playful, you're very affable, but we don't know how committed you are to winning, whether it's taking them out to dinner, which I know Dwight Howard has tried to do, whether it's having personal conversations with them, which I know Dwight Howard has done, you still have to address the situation and make sure they don't believe you to be somebody who doesn't prioritize winning and success. And to say that just being yourself, that's all it takes, nah, it doesn't work that way. Dwight Howard is a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, back-to-back-to-back, 2008 to 2011. When healthy, this brother is big time. He has a very valid point when he talks about, as a big man, you want to be involved. You can't just dribble the ball and bounce the ball and do all the things that James Harden does, because that's not your skill set. You're a big boy. You're down low, banging down low. You expect to have the beast fed. And that's the job of a guard. And if that's not being done, Dwight Howard's absolutely right. And Charles Barkley is absolutely right when he says, unquestionably, Dwight Howard has to opt out. This is his last opportunity to make big-time dollars. And he has to go to a winning situation where his marketability can elevate, because then that affable personality comes in, and the things that he wants to do in the endorsement world will present themselves even more the way they once were when he was in Orlando. But in order to do that, he has to look in the mirror and recognize that even though playing with James Harden, hogging the ball, as great as James Harden is, hogging the ball didn't work to his advantage, Dwight Howard also assisted in his own disadvantage, because he was the one who elected to leave Orlando with Stan Van Gundy. He was the one who elected to ultimately depart L.A. with Kobe. And so when you have that and you decide to go to Houston, well, then the situation is what it is. Looking in the mirror and understanding what you did to yourself, and, to use his words, not being pissed off at anybody else's notions of it, but being pissed off at yourself.
Yep.
Because you could have made better decisions. He's a good dude. He's a good brother. He can play. I still think he's got a lot of game left in him. But I thought last night, I agree with you, the narrative was all wrong. Dwight Howard is not perceived as being a bad guy. He is perceived as being a guy that is very, very nice, whose commitment to winning has been repeatedly questioned.
Yep. And to your point about Orlando, I don't think he'll ever have a better situation that he had with Stan Van Gundy and that team that got to the finals against Kobe and lost, obviously. But Stan was great for Dwight because Stan's not a bad guy either, but he's a nagger and sort of a nitpicker in a good way. You know, like he constantly relit Dwight's fire, and he surrounded Dwight with an array of three-point snipers, so they had the perfect blend of inside, outside. Like, has it ever been better in a smaller market?
It hasn't been better. It hasn't been better. But I'll give you a couple of scenarios where it could potentially be just as good as it was in Orlando, meaning in terms of Dwight's use. I'm not talking about the same level of success, like you might end up winning a conference championship, even though it's possible. I think Dwight Howard going to play for Rick Carlisle is a win, because Rick Carlisle is an exceptional coach.
Yes.
I think Dwight Howard going to D.C. to play with John Wall, if they can't get Kevin Durant, with Scott Brooks there now as the coach, because John Wall can get to the basket anytime he wants, and he knows how to pass, and he's a mercurial talent. I think that could work. I think him going to Atlanta with a Popovich protege in Budenholzer could also work to his advantage, plus it would enable him to go home. He don't need to be with the Knicks in New York. Okay, because Phil Jackson don't want to coach. Phil Jackson wants Kurt Rambis because you don't need to go there. But talking about Atlanta, talking about Dallas, talking about Washington, I think those are very viable opportunities.
So you're saying Dwight is going to get his money on the open market once more, right?
Well, he's going to get some money. I don't know if he'll get max dollars.
Yeah.
It'll take a desperate team in order to give it to him. But it's not like he's a scrub, Skip. I mean, if it was not for the Golden State Warriors brand of basketball,
right,
Dwight Howard would demand even more money on the open market.
I got it. But wouldn't you agree that the bottom line to Dwight, to Kenny's point about you have to be who you are, that's who he's always going to be. I don't think you can change Dwight at the next stop where suddenly he plays with fire that we've never seen before. He is who he is.
No, you're right. You're right, but you can change the perception. And here's how you can change the perception. You can make sure that the players who play with you don't think that. The coach who coaches you doesn't think that. See, on the outside, looking in, we can think whatever we want, but it's been validated by the Kobes, the James Hardens, a guy like Shaq who's tutored a bunch of big men, saying these things.
Correct.
So it has validity. But if you go about the business of ingratiating yourself with prospective teammates and coaches where they know unquestionably that you have a commitment to excellence, and there are no questions about that, then the outside world will adapt because you'll have guys vouching for you. That's what he needs.
Good point. Starting from the inside out. Skip's not buying it, though. We step aside from the NBA for now. For our next debate, we will go to the NFL, where the Broncos are the defending Super Bowl champs, of course, but it's the team they beat in the AFC Championship game that sits atop the power rankings. How do the fellas feel about that? We'll get into it when we come back. So here's the latest. The post-NFL draft power rankings are out for both ESPN.com and Vegas, but there are a few differences here, so stay with me. The top 5 from ESPN.com are the Patriots, Panthers, Packers, Seahawks, and Cardinals. However, the Vegas top 5 has the Seahawks on top, followed by the Patriots, Cardinals, Steelers, and Packers. Skip, which ranking do you think is more accurate?
Stephen A., obviously the most glaring difference is that the Vegas ranking, I always have respect for it, has Seattle at the top, number 1 overall, while ESPN.com has the Seahawks 4th. I'm with ESPN.com on this one. I cannot make the case for Seattle post-draft, that's the point here, after your draft, vaulting to number 1. Let's quickly look at the Seattle draft. They drafted the tackle out of Texas A&M with the last pick in the first round. Nice pick. Then Jaron Reed from Alabama, second round. Very nice pick. Mel Kiper gave them a B+ for their draft. Nice draft. Life-changing? I think not. I could be wrong, but I don't see it. Then let's look at what's gone now from Seattle. We think Marshawn Lynch is gone. I don't know that for a fact, but he says he's retired. What a huge loss for that team, not only on the field, but as you well know, in the locker room. What a force he was. On offense and in the locker room, he was a one-man legion of boom all by himself. He was the driving force of that offense. Obviously, Russell Wilson has emerged as the star of the offense, but that's a big loss emotionally and physically. No Bruce Irvin anymore. No Russell Okung anymore. And then Jimmy Graham wrecked his knee. We think he'll come back, but he never seemed to quite fit into the flow of the offense, even when he was healthy. So I look back at last year and I say, Seattle should have lost that game in the cold up in Minnesota, except for the missed field goal at the end. They did lose that game. And then they went to Carolina and fell behind 31-0. They fought back and lost 31-24. That's the team that's number 1 over the New England Patriots, who added Martellus Bennett, Chris Hogan as the possession receiver on offense. Amendola took less money to stay with the Patriots. And then they traded Chandler Jones for Jonathan Cooper, an offensive lineman who's pretty to very good, will beef up the offensive line protection of Tom Brady. Obviously, Chris Long's on defense. Terrence Knighton added on defense can only help. And then LeGarrette Blount returns along with, I think, a healthy Dion Lewis in the backfield. That's pretty great to me. So, to me, that team got better, as Tom Brady will stay the same at age 39, I believe. So how can you argue Seattle over New England the way the Vegas ranking is arguing? I don't get it.
Well, you're going with the ESPN rankings. I'm going with the Las Vegas rankings. Why? Because I think your pick is emotional and mine is not. We're talking about top 5 teams, or 1 to 32, but we're focusing on the top 5 primarily, and all you can think about is who's at number 1 and who's not. I'm thinking about overall your top 5. If you're Vegas, you've got Seattle, New England, Arizona, Pittsburgh, and Green Bay. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. I understand. I'm looking at them and I'm saying here, okay, you lost Irvin, you lost Okung, your left tackle. I get all of that, but I still look at Rawls, who ran pretty well in Marshawn Lynch's Wilson's absence last year. If he could come back from that ankle surgery, I like that. I also love the fact that I'm looking at a Russell Wilson that has emerged to the top echelon of quarterbacks in the National Football League. I hold nothing against what their struggles were in Minnesota. Those temperatures, it was damn near illegal to be playing in that kind of weather, for crying out loud. The football probably felt like a rock. I mean, it is what it is. So, you know, and then they went down to Carolina. Yeah, they were down 31-0. They were getting blitzed. It was embarrassing. But I recall them coming back and making a game out of it before losing 31-24. So when I look at it from that perspective, I find myself looking at Seattle. I think that they're a team to be reckoned with, and I want to give them their respect where it's due. When I look at New England, would I put New England number one? Probably. But if New England's number one and Seattle's number two, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I'm looking at Arizona, for example. Kim Dichie, Bruce Arians got to calm him down in practice because he's blowing over everybody. But they still got a crew. They still got Calais Campbell. They still got Patrick Peterson. On offense, you still got Carson Palmer. You still got Fitzgerald and Floyd and all of these boys. You still got Bruce Arians as your coach. I think they belong in the top three. I'm looking at Pittsburgh. How in God's name is Pittsburgh not in ESPN.com's top five? With that offense, I know the defense is suspect. There's no question about that. But I'm looking at this offense and what a juggernaut they can end up beating. Losing Martavius Bryant really, really annoys me. I'm disgusted by that. But Le'Veon Bell coming back, D'Angelo Williams coming back, still Big Ben Roethlisberger is your quarterback. Antonio Brown is coming back. He's not concussed any longer. Last time I checked, Vontaze Burfict won't be hitting him anytime soon. I expect him and Wheaton and those boys to be okay. At number 5, do I need to say it? What is it, Skip? Do you want to say it with me?
No,
He's a bad man. And we're talking about Jordy Nelson coming back with Cobb and the crew.
I thought he was the bad man.
Eddie Lacy. Eddie Lacy no longer has a pot belly. He's gotten rid of the fat. He's lost about 15 to 20 pounds. I look at that and I say to myself, Vegas seems to me that they're closer to having it right than ESPN.com. I understand that the Panthers are number 2 on this list. How can we dismiss Cam Newton, especially when Kelvin Benjamin and those is expected to come back with the crew that they have in place?
Yep.
But I think losing Josh Norman is going to be a huge, huge loss for them in their secondary. And I dare say that their defense may be a bit more challenged in this upcoming season than they were last season. I think last season it was destiny's ride. I don't think a ride like that is going to happen for them again for a while. I'm not saying they're going to fall off the map, but I can see them going from 15-1 to 12-4 or 11-5. I can see that happening. So I just look at it and I say, I'm going to roll with the Vegas ranking here. And I'm going to think that's more favorable towards accuracy than the ESPN.com rankings.
Okay. Back to your Green Bay point. Mostly last year, your bad man was just bad by his standards. Let's just keep that on the record. By his standards. And by the way, I'm starting to wonder whether Jordy Nelson might have made Aaron Rodgers more than vice versa. I'm just
that's just you being petty and antagonistic with your nonsense. That's all that is. That's all it is. You trying to take a shot at Aaron Rodgers. That's it.
Should I call him Arrogant Rodgers? Arrogant, remember that?
Ain't nothing wrong with little arrogance.
Okay, yeah, nothing wrong.
Ain't nothing wrong with little arrogance. He's Aaron Rodgers. He's entitled.
Yeah,
he's entitled.
If
he can, did you just say if he can back it up? Is that what just came out of your mouth?
He didn't back it up last year.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Back to the top. Back to what really counts. What matters is that ESPN.com says the New England Patriots are number 1, but you say no, that's not true. So
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's possible. I could flip. I said I don't care if they or Seattle are number 1, but overall I like the top 5 of Vegas overall than I like ESPN.com's top 5. That's what I said.
Okay, but can you make any case for Seattle at this moment in your mind being better than New England? If you can go 1-2-2-1, give me your case. Show me where New England's deficient. Show me that receiving core. Show me how Gronkowski and Edelman, when you add Martellus and Chris Hogan and Keith Amendola, tell me how that's not firepower that Seattle does not have. I'm sorry.
Well, you might say they don't have that, but I'm thinking of Russell Wilson being the dual threat that he is. I'm thinking about the fact that they struggled defensively last year because of Cam Chancellor's holdout and that first half of the season it took them to get their bearings under them. I'm thinking about 5 fourth-quarter leads that they had that they lost. Things could have went this way. Things could have went that way. I don't anticipate that that's something that's going to happen this year, this time around. I can see Seattle going 12-4 this year. I think Arizona is their lone threat. I'm not worried about the Los Angeles Rams, no disrespect to Les Snead, but and I say Les Snead because when it comes to Jeff Fisher, 15 playoff omissions in 21 seasons, I don't even want to talk about him, okay? And don't get me started with Chip Kelly and the San Francisco Niners. They don't even deserve to be called the 49ers for crying out loud. Matter of fact, why don't you call them the San Jose 49ers, considering how far their stadium is from San Francisco? Why don't you do that?
Yeah,
well, anyway, whatever, Santa Clara, wherever the hell it is. The point is, in the end, it comes down to Seattle and Arizona having to fight for supremacy in the West. I think about Seattle, and I'm thinking about the fact that they were playing on their home turf. Things might have been better for them. And if you could use the argument that the New England Patriots are nearly unbeatable in Foxborough as a reason to decry how come they miss Super Bowls from time to time, I can use the same argument in recent memory for the Seattle Seahawks.
Okay. Now, final point, where I also much agree with ESPN.com over Vegas ranking. My Dallas Cowboys are 11th in ESPN.com and 15th in Vegas. How can you not have them at least 11th after they drafted Ezekiel Elliott to add to the firepower, the new triplets of Romo
because
and
they did nothing with their
offensive
defense.
line?
Because they did nothing with their defense. I understand Ezekiel Elliott is going to help, but they did nothing with their defense, and that's why. Because people are looking at them and they're saying they're dominant and awesome on one side of the ball, but they're highly questionable on the defensive side of the ball. And by the way, since you wanted to bring up one of your points, allow me to bring up one of mine before we end this segment. When it comes to Aaron Rodgers, that dude with the off year, okay? Yeah. 31 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, okay? And he completed, I mean, it's bad because he only completed 60% of his passes. Yep. But 31 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and a QBR of 64. That is the definition of a bad year for Aaron Rodgers. That's all I'm trying to say. That's a good year for 75% of the quarterbacks in the NFL. But for Aaron Rodgers, I'll give it to you, that's a bad year. You know why? Because when you're a bad man, we expect more. That's all. What? But let's be clear. Let's put it in perspective.
You were a much badder man in that soap opera than Aaron Rodgers was on the field last year. You were the bad man.
Well, Brink is a bad boy. I mean, there's no doubt about that. You know, Sonny Corinthos, you know, I mean, this is what we do. This is what we do. But he knows what Aaron Rodgers is.
He's the tech scoundrel or whatever he is.
Oh, stop. The Cowboys at 16. That's what you guys do. Defense wins championships. Let's go to break here. LeBron James trying to avenge his last year's finals loss, but it's the loss to the Spurs that he still has an issue with. I will explain after the break. Stay here. The Heat and Raptors play in a pivotal Game 5 tonight. Series tied at 2 from Toronto. Stephen A., who you got?
I'm going with the Heat. Obviously, I picked them to win this series of 6 games. In order to do it, they've got to win the next 2 games because I don't like their chances in a Game 7. So I'm just sticking with my prediction, and I'll be the first to admit that it's a bit emotional because I'd much rather be in South Beach or near South Beach than in Toronto, Canada. I'm sorry, but that's just the way that I feel. Not to take anything away from the great job that Dwayne Casey has done. Kyle Lowry had a big-time game the other night. DeMar DeRozan is not healthy. There's been 3 overtime games in the first 4 games here. Dwyane Wade put his head down and just handled business in Game 4. I just think even though Whiteside is out, without Valanciunas, the Heat doesn't have to worry about Toronto's interior game. And as a result, they just need to guard the perimeter. I think as a result, they will win Game 5. They've got to win Game 5 because I don't like their chances in a Game 7. That's why I'm going with them to win the next 2 games, Skip.
I am also picking with my heart. I want to see Dwayne versus LeBron in the next round. I can't wait. I don't love this pick, Stephen A., but I'm going to go with Miami to win tonight. Toronto at home is a 4.5-point favorite, but its stars are really slumping. DeRozan was 4 for 17 the other night. Kyle Lowry was 2 for 11, 0 for 6 from 3. It degenerated into Corey Joseph or bust for Toronto. Dwyane Wade was the best player on the court, and I think he'll be again tonight. And I'm with you. This is the game that Miami needs to win to get into the commanding position to get to the next round.
All right.
Stephen A., by the way, the blue looks very nice on you. You look handsome.
Well,
I like
I would say this. Not as great as Dwight looks on you.
Aw,
I would say that.
Thank you. I'm looking a little
that.
Miami.
Oh,
I like
well,
your Spurs colors.
I'll just stay out of the way over here
I wonder
in front
if
of
you'll
this
get all
love
black
fest.
on
She
I don't
does
want to
have-
interfere
she
with this
does have
love
that
fest
South
back
Beach
and forth
look to her
between
right
LA
now.
and Bristol.
So, a source telling our Calvin Watkins that the Rockets have interviewed TNT's Kenny Smith for their head coaching vacancy. Stephen A., could you see this working?
I absolutely could see it working. I would miss Kenny Smith on TNT. I'm actually jealous watching the show because I love it, and I love all of those guys. I've known them for years. They're personal friends of mine. Kenny Smith is one of the brilliant basketball minds in this business. I'm not saying that just because he's a friend. He's a great, great person. He's highly knowledgeable. He's a good man. He knows what he's talking about. And more importantly, when you talk about an individual that could successfully go about the business of ingratiating himself with the modern day player to maximize their skill set, I definitely think that Kenny Smith is somebody that can do that very, very successfully. Not to mention the fact that when it comes to Houston, it's even more of a viable option because Kenny Smith comes with credentials, not just because of his years of clear expertise as a basketball analyst. That's unparalleled as far as I'm concerned, by the way, but also because the guy is a two-time champion as a point guard for that franchise. If you're Les Alexander and you want somebody that can ingratiate himself with the modern-day player, which is James Harden, and on top of it all, maximize your potential and make you feel good about it, who can also go out there and recruit other players to want to come and play for you, I don't think there's anybody better for that particular job than Kenny Smith. I hope he gets it if he wants it. But if he doesn't want it, I don't blame him because that TNT set is a damn good place to work.
No question.
I got you. I'm with you on this. I'm intrigued. I think this could work and work big for the city of Houston and for that franchise for all the reasons you just detailed. I look back at the precedent that's set, and I'm sure there are those out there who would say, come on, Kenny Smith's just going to walk straight out of the broadcasting booth with not 1 second of paying any dues as an assistant coach and suddenly became a head coach of that franchise in that city? Wow. It's happened, and it's worked. I look back at Doc Rivers, walked out of the TV booth right into Orlando's job. Look at him now. I look at Mark Jackson, walked out of the TV booth into the Warriors job, did really well. And he's still a viable candidate for the next job opening.
He should be the head coach for the New York Knicks.
Quinn Buckner,
should be there.
Okay, I got you. Quinn Buckner did it. Well, I was in Dallas in those days. Came from NBC, went straight to the Mavericks. Wasn't great, but he pulled it off and was a very smart basketball coach. Doug Collins really pulled it off, coming out of the CBS booth to the Bulls, with the Michael Jordan Bulls, obviously, and then went on to even bigger fame elsewhere. It worked. Steve Kerr was a GM in Phoenix for 3 years, but he had no assistant coaching experience before he took over Golden State.
It worked.
It just works. When you have pedigree in the league as a player, somehow it translates. You don't have to deal with 53 people on a roster as you do in the NFL. You're basically having to deal with 6 or 7 people. And nobody knows the X's and O's. No analyst on TV, no disrespect to anybody at ESPN, but nobody is better than Kenny Smith at doing the X's and O's. He really gets it, and he can talk it, and I'm sure he could teach it. Then it comes down to, can you juggle and handle the superstar egos on your team? And usually there are 1 or 2 or 3. I think he can. I don't know, would it drive him nuts? Well, maybe it would. I don't think so. I think he could do it, and I think he'd be a really good choice. That he'd actually help sell a few tickets early on. If they didn't win, it wouldn't work. But I'd want to watch Kenny coach as much as I'd want to watch James Harden play.
Kenny's an entertainer, man.
Yeah,
Kenny's a guy that knows how to ingratiate himself with people in a very pleasant manner. When you're around him, you like being around him. You like talking to him. And his basketball knowledge is unquestioned. The guy knows what he's talking about. And his basketball credentials are that of a 2-time champion as a point guard who, by the way, was at the University of North Carolina prior to being in the NBA. and becoming the two-time champion. The brother he knows the game backwards and forwards, and Houston is where his success as an NBA player occurred. It's a perfect matchup if he wants it.
Yeah, I agree.
But he would be walking away from TNT. That's a hell of a job.
I know.
Special show.
One of the best jobs in television.
It is.
That's a hard thing to walk away from.
You know, and I know there would be long nights coaching where he would miss that gig at TNT.
Hell yes. I don't even work there, and I'd miss it.
Yep.
No, that show's incredible for sure. Great chemistry. Dwyane Wade, speaking of great chemistry, he has been vintage Wade of late. Will he be able to carry the Heat? So that's our Dave McMenamin saying that LeBron is not a fan of all the love that Kawhi gets. Skip, what do you make of this?
Okay, Stephen A., so let's be fair about this. It's not that LeBron has said anything negative about Kawhi Leonard. It's, according to Dave McMenamin, our reporter, that LeBron just won't comment on Kawhi. That's the way I'm taking this, if I'm reading it correctly. It's not so much that, to use the old expression, LeBron is damning with faint praise. He just won't give him any praise. And we know that LeBron can be the ultimate diplomat, ambassador for the game of basketball. And usually when he's asked about an opponent, he'll have something to say, often something nice to say about his opponents. So that's the perspective we're talking about. Now let's talk about what happened the two times they faced in the finals. To me, the first one obviously was saved. LeBron's legacy was saved by the Ray Allen three from the corner in Game 6 that forced overtime, which the Heat won and then won Game 7. LeBron was big in Game 7. LeBron would have been the GOAT of Game 6, and I don't mean the greatest of all times. I mean the literal GOAT. If the Spurs had closed that deal, seems like we're always talking about the Spurs can't close the deal, but if they had closed that deal, I think Kawhi might have been the MVP of that series. He would have at least have been a prime candidate to be MVP of that series. The next time, 2 years later, 2014, he was, I'm sorry, 2016, I'm losing track, 2014, yeah, he was the MVP of the next time they met when the Spurs won in 5 games. So that's 2 times against LeBron that Kawhi could have been the MVP, and he was 1 time. I think that Kawhi does the best job of anybody I have seen on LeBron. I think he's LeBron's toughest matchup. Nobody can stop LeBron, but I think Kawhi bothers LeBron as much as any defender in basketball because of Kawhi's height, length, strength, quickness, leaping ability, anticipation. He's all over LeBron. LeBron's going to get his numbers, but he's going to have to really work hard for his numbers. Now, to LeBron's point, if there's any negativity, if there's any, what's the best word, resentment of Kawhi's rise towards superstar and the best two-way player in basketball, I get this if LeBron thinks this. LeBron toils under the burden of expectation and pressure that only a superstar can feel, that only for the longest time LeBron was viewed as the best player in the game. That kind of pressure and expectation. Nobody expects that much even yet from Kawhi Leonard. And to that point, you know how I feel. Too often Kawhi disappears in big games, in big moments. 0 points in Game 4 of the 4th quarter back in Oklahoma City. Last night, I don't know where he was in the 4th. I don't know if he got taken out of the offense by Tony Parker. But as we talked about earlier, he got up 4 shots in the 4th quarter, made 2 of them, made 1 out of 2 free throws for 5 total points. It wasn't enough. Too often, Kawhi gets as quiet on the court as he is off the court. So that's what holds him back from being superstar. So if that's why LeBron is reticent to proclaim him a superstar, I get that. But in the end, I think it sticks in his craw that Kawhi could have been the MVP of those 2 series, and it's more of a finals issue than maybe a Kawhi has arrived issue. Your thoughts?
Well, since folks want to speculate, let me say this. I haven't interviewed LeBron James one-on-one in years, but I've spoken to him on several occasions. At no time has he ever been disrespectful or dismissive of an opponent, particularly one that has a championship pedigree, which obviously Kawhi Leonard has earned. And every star that I've ever spoken to, whether it's Jordan with Joe Dumars or, or somebody else, you usually respect the dude that's a tough competitor, like Kobe gave props to Tony Allen. He didn't just wait until he was retiring to do that. Kobe always recognized the fact that Tony Allen was one tough defender and gave him props where props was due. Stars don't have a problem giving props to individuals who show up and play them tougher because they believe ultimately it makes them better, right? That's number one. Number two, if you're LeBron, you also have to take into account how insulting it is, not just for the point you made about how Kawhi Leonard didn't have that pressure, but what about who Kawhi Leonard is playing with and who Kawhi Leonard was playing for? Now, granted, you look at LeBron having D. Wade and Bosh and all of that stuff. Well, D. Wade wasn't healthy. And as good as Bosh is, he wasn't Tim Duncan. All right, and then when you talk about the combination of Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker, you're talking about a team with significant cohesiveness because they've been playing together for years. And then we all recognize that Greg Popovich is the best coach in the game. And so you've got that guy coaching against LeBron James and coaching his team to collectively defend LeBron James. Now, let's also take into account the fact that Kawhi Leonard essentially ascended, Skip, because even though he played well on both ends of the floor, averaging 17 and 7 with 1.6 steals a game, if I remember correctly, keep in mind that the big moment that arrived for Kawhi was in Game 3 of that finals in 2014, when he dropped 29. After the series was tied 1-1. He dropped 29 in Miami, and he outplayed LeBron James for that game where LeBron just had 22 points, and it was when Popovich was punching him in his chest affectionately, like, way to go, because he had challenged Kawhi Leonard before that to really step up and embrace the challenge of going up against the world's best player at the time. But in that final series, as I look at the numbers here, a series in which Miami lost 4-1 and were outscored by 72 points in the losses. They won their one game by 2. They lost the 4 games by a combined 72 points, which was a 70-point difference you brought up on many occasions. LeBron James, 25, 35, 22, 28, 31, and 10. And so when I look at it from that perspective, and I think about the absence of help that he had, because the Dwyane Wade we're seeing today was not the Dwyane Wade in that finals, all right? LeBron is sitting back and like, I'm going up against Kawhi Leonard with Tim Duncan before Father Time, with Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, all right, and Greg Popovich coaching against me. And what I got here, we're the reigning defending champions, but at the same time, they had let go of Mike Miller, the previous summer, if I remember correctly. Still had Ray Allen and stuff like that. But Miami had dissipated to some degree where their struggles appeared more pronounced. And you just sensed something was wrong. And so when we look at it from that perspective, it can be a bit annoying for somebody to try to elevate somebody to your stratosphere when, A, the dues hadn't been paid, B, they're in a similar position, and C, they're ignoring the precarious circumstances in which you're working under.
Okay, so if I hear you correctly, you could see where LeBron would have a little resentment of the elevation of Kawhi's stardom.
No, I don't see him as having a resentment of the elevation of Kawhi. I see him having a resentment of the questions coming from reporters who are not taking the totality of the situation into consideration. If it's the equivalent of somebody asking you a stupid question. If they ask you a stupid question or something that don't make any damn sense in your mind, that may annoy you, not necessarily the player. Who doesn't know that Kawhi Leonard can play? Who doesn't know that Kawhi Leonard is a star? Who doesn't know that Kawhi Leonard is a star because of what he does, not just offensively, but primarily on a defensive end? He's a headache for anybody. Anybody. This is the reigning 2-time defensive player of the year. This brother can play. Of course you got to respect him, but the problem is if somebody comes up to you and acts like, oh, it's just him against you, and he don't have anybody around him, and you're just coming up short and not taking into consideration the conditions under which you're working. That's a problem. It's a problem when that's ignored.
But you just detailed why you discount Kawhi's impact in those 2 finals, because he had more help, in your view, than LeBron did. So why wouldn't you think LeBron would also discount it to the point he just wouldn't even want to comment on it? Yet it still validates the question. It's okay to ask him, what do you think, LeBron, of a guy who, by the way, just finished ahead of you in the MVP voting? Barely, but just ahead.
Well, I didn't mean it like that. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. I'm not saying that somebody presented the question like that. I'm certainly not trying to impugn reporters in that regard. I'm saying to treat him like Kawhi Leonard is better than him. I'm saying you got to take all of those things into consideration. It makes sense this year why Kawhi Leonard would finish ahead of most guys in the MVP voting. It makes sense why somebody would look at Kawhi as a viable and valid adversary of LeBron James. But when you ask the question, you also got to bring to the table why you consider it to be such, and you got to take all conditions into consideration. Okay, you can't just ignore the conditions.
But remember, we reacted the next day after on TNT Inside the NBA after one of the Thursday night games. On Friday, we reacted to Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith proclaiming Kawhi Leonard a superstar, and both of them said, hey, he's now the best two-way player in basketball. If my memory serves, I think they both did. So why wouldn't reporters then ask LeBron, what's your view of Kawhi? Not that
I'm
they're...
just thinking... Yeah. I apologize. You're right. I'm wrong about that because I'm thinking along the lines of just like that reporter the other day that asked Damian Lillard that question about you. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm thinking about questions of that magnitude. I totally forgot about Barkley and Kenny Smith bringing up the comparisons. And if a reporter rolled up to LeBron and asked it in that fashion, I definitely think it's valid. I'm just thinking of folks going up to a superstar the caliber of a LeBron James and saying something about this guy, trying to antagonize him, when in fact you're not taking all of the challenges into consideration. I look at the conditions under which somebody plays. I covered Allen Iverson, Skip, for 10 years. Who did he have to play with offensively? I know he shot 41% from the field. But if you looked at the team that he was playing with offensively, because defensively they were stout, but offensively, if you looked at the team he was playing with, it's a miracle Allen Iverson shot 30%, let alone 41. So I'm just saying you take those things into consideration when you go up to these guys and ask questions that touches on their greatness. That's all I'm saying.
Got it.
All right. Speaking of Kawhi, bottom line, are the Spurs done? Skip and Stephen A will answer that question when we come back. Stephen A, is T-Mac right? Is the NBA watered down?
No, it is not. He's wrong. Like I was joking about yesterday, T-Mac is my man. We go back a long ways. I'm used to educating him about certain things, and this is one of them. T-Mac was a guy that averaged better than 24 points per game. He was no scrub. He was a star in this league for a while. He was a big-time player at one point. But the reality is that he's one of those guys. He's not from the older generation, but he's old enough where he appreciates a more physical brand of basketball, rule changes that didn't facilitate more offense, having to do the things that he did in an era where the level of physicality was still allowed to some degree. I can appreciate where he's coming from. He wasn't around when it was the early 90s and late 80s when it was really, really bad physically. But at the same time, in 2000 and beyond, certainly there was some physicality that still existed. So I would get his point if he was bringing that up in terms of a watered down game. But he said watered down players. And he is totally wrong. Let me tell you something right now. Kevin Durant can average 30 in any era. Steph Curry, regardless of how physical the game is not compared to what it was, could average 25 to 30 in any era. LeBron James could do what he do and what he has done in any era. Dwyane Wade would have adjusted in any era. Russell Westbrook would have adjusted in any era. CP3 would have been CP3 in any era. There are plenty of guys in this league that are stars, that are comparable to the stars that existed in Tracy McGrady's era. And so when he says what he says, I think that he's wrong because I don't think it was his intent at all to come across as disrespectful. I certainly am not accusing my man T-Mac of that because he wouldn't do that. He's not that kind of dude. But I would tell you that I think that you've got guys that look at today's game, how soft the game is called, what you're allowed to get with on offense, how strapped opposing defenders and defenses actually are. And they harbor such resentment towards the game because of what these guys are allowed to do and what has been facilitated for them. But what wasn't facilitated for the Tracy McGrady's and the Allen Iversons and the Vince Carters and others, and Kobe and them back in the day, that I think comments like this emanate from that. But it doesn't make it accurate. It makes it understandable why they would say it, but it doesn't make it accurate. He's not accurate here. It is a watered-down game. He didn't say that. He said watered-down talent.
Yep, he did.
Steph Curry is no watered-down talent. Steph Curry, with that marksmanship, could be on any team in any era. That back in the day, Skip, they just would have surrounded him with goons to protect him.
I agree.
They don't have to do that now because the rules have changed.
In no way should we even think about diminishing the achievement of Steph Curry's unanimous MVP. In no way, shape, or form.
Not at all.
You know and I know, and you're with me on this, I'm the biggest Michael Jordan fan you will ever find. Do I think Steph Curry is better than Michael Jordan? I do not. I'm sorry, I don't. Can I see, is it at least debatable that the star quality of Michael Jordan's prime years in the NBA was a little above today's star quality? I guess it's debatable, but the more I think about it, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You know, in his prime, Michael's going up against a Karl Malone, Hakeem Olajuwon, Drexler, Barkley, Magic, Shaq. Who else am I forgetting? David Robinson. Okay, but now you just listed off all those guys, starting with James Harden, who won the Players MVP a year ago, and the two guys in Oklahoma City, and Chris Paul. And then if we just go back a couple of years to a healthier Derrick Rose and a healthier, younger Tony Parker and Dwight Howard in his prime defensively, wow, I don't know. It's pretty close. And yet Steph Curry has eclipsed his competition. He has revolutionized the game of basketball. He has turned it upside down to the point that a slender 6'3" point guard is dominating the game of basketball at the highest level as a scorer. Not a facilitator, he's a scorer. And he's an unstoppable scorer who can get you 40 like that. He can get you 17 in overtime like that. Even coming back from injury without his conditioning, a little rusty. 17 like that in overtime. Wow, that's revolutionary to me. So I'm glad you're with me on this. I'm sorry. I get the sort of the argument. At least it's mildly debatable. But what's not debatable is that Steph Curry is still head and shoulders above still a very strong field of competitors and stars in this league.
The one thing that I will never allow any player, former player especially, to do is to belittle in any way today's players. These brothers can play.
Yes, sir.
It's just that it's a new game, and it's robbed the defenses of being able to play a physical brand of basketball to neutralize guys. But from a skill set perspective, the stars in this league, the true stars in the NBA, can play in any era. Any era. It's just who you would surround them with. Yesterday on the radio, I brought up Patrick Ewing. Well, why nobody touched Patrick Ewing? Because he had Oakley and Anthony Mason, God rest his soul. And prior to that, Ken Bannister, Xavier McDaniel around him. Why did nobody touch Michael Jordan earlier on? Skip, you know this. When Charles Oakley was there, what was going to happen if you touched Michael Jordan? You know, he'll take a bullet for Michael Jordan. Now, you look at the bad boy Pistons, Isaiah Thomas. I'm sorry, Rick Mahorn, Bill Laimbeer, Dennis Rodman, James Edwards. I mean, Mark Aguirre and Adrian Dantley. They weren't punks. I mean, look, and Joe Dumars. I mean, and Vinny the Microwave Johnson. You knew not to touch. And John Sally, of course, you knew not to touch Isaiah Thomas, or it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem.
I agree.
That's all I'm trying to say.
And by the way, we neglected to mention one big star of today's league, LaMarcus Aldridge, just for the record. Just had to throw that in.
We'll see.
Will he show up Thursday night?
We'll
I don't know. L.A., live up to those initials.
I hope so. I like him. I mean, he's a good guy. I'm rooting for him. But he's got to show up in a moment like this. He's got to show up.
Got to show up.
Got to.
All right. Meanwhile, Kenny Smith is considering a job change, but does Skip and Stephen A. think it's a good idea? We'll tell you that when we come back. So the Thunder have the Spurs on the brink of elimination after taking a 3-2 series lead. Game 6 is Thursday in Oklahoma City, but Skip, San Antonio is favored by 2.5. Are your Spurs done?
No, they are not done. I said Stephen A. Smith, Spurs in 7, and I'm sticking with it. Let me count the ways I think they are not done. Let's reiterate. Game 1, Spurs blew out Thunder. Game 2, my Spurs had the ball and a chance to score and win the game with 10 seconds left at home, and they failed to do so. They went up to Oklahoma City for Game 3, and they flat out won it. Game 4, they were up 6 early in the fourth quarter of Game 4 and couldn't close that deal. Then last night, as you well know, up 13 midway through the third quarter, up 6 with 4 minutes left at home, where they went 40-1 in the regular season, couldn't close that deal. My point to you is, in all 5 games, they were in position to win the game fairly late in the game, and they lost 3 of them. Do I love it? Nope, I don't. Is it a bad sign? You can call it a bad sign. I'm seeing the glass as half full. I think they do, too. They know they can beat this team. Danny Green, who made 6 out of 9 threes last night, God bless him, said something very interesting to me after that game. He said, I think we'll play angry in Game 6 back in Oklahoma City. That's something I rarely see my Spurs play, is with anger. The even-keel Spurs are, for my taste, sometimes too even-keel. Last night, you watched the game. Did they not come out lifeless and flat in the first quarter of that game? I don't know if they hung in the first quarter, but they did. They were deadheaded. LaMarcus Aldridge was out of it. I think Kawhi Leonard is going to have to play much bigger and more angry than he played last night. The whole group of them, I think, should play angry at Oklahoma City and fight Russell Westbrook's fire with their own fire. They are fully capable of doing that. I look for Coach Popovich to throw some classic curveballs at Oklahoma City with some fairly dramatic changes. I think Boban Marjanovic ought to play a few minutes just to shake it up and give them a little better chance on the backboards where, as you know, they got crushed last night. 15 offensive rebounds. Can't happen. If you do it again, you're going to lose, and you'll lose badly at Oklahoma City. It's time for my Spurs to take it personally and to fight fire with fire. And I think they will tomorrow night. And I'm sticking with them to win tomorrow night and in Game 7 back in San Antonio.
Well, I'm not. I picked them to win in 7. I'll be the first to admit, Skip, I have no conviction. I have nothing in this fight. I'm a Knicks fan. They're pathetic. I'm not even allowed to talk about the Knicks during this time of year because they're so irrelevant. So I have nothing to gain nor lose in all of this. But I will tell you that, Skip, I'm very worried about the San Antonio Spurs. I think they could end up losing this game. I don't know. I have no clue. But here's why I have no clue. Because, Skip, you are right in terms of the upside. Obviously, you're emotionally invested. But you are right about the upside because here's the deal. San Antonio should have won 2 of these games. They should have won them. Especially last night. They flat out blew it. Now, the officials helped. But I'm thinking about play calling on the part of Greg Popovich. I'm thinking about how many wide open shots I saw missed. Skip, it does not matter what Greg Popovich does or what you say. If LaMarcus Aldridge can't hit shots, you're toast. That's what it comes down to. And that's what this is really all about. I expect, and I saw this look in OKC's face when they won the game last night, and Kevin Durant just looked at everybody and waved them off and was telling Russell Westbrook, come on, let's go, get off the floor. We got another game to win. They're incredibly focused. Kevin Durant has them focused. Russell Westbrook appeared even more focused, even though he could turn around, you know, with the bipolar game that he has in terms of being explosive 1 minute and detrimental to himself the next. And he could be that kind of guy. There's no doubt. But the flip side is, you know that Oklahoma is going to come out feisty, ready to roll, doing whatever it is that they do. The flip side to it is that the Spurs can offset all of that if they hit shots.
Yep.
And we don't know if that's going to happen. You know why? Because when it comes down to it, Skip, it's going to come down to LaMarcus Aldridge. And LaMarcus Aldridge has to show up. He's got to show up. Now, I ask you a very simple question, Skip. Do you know that he's going to show? I know how you feel about the age-old veterans, but they're age-old veterans for a reason. So this comes down to Kawhi and LaMarcus. I even have faith in Kawhi. What about L.A.? What about LaMarcus Aldridge? Are you sure? That's why I don't know. LaMarcus Aldridge hit shots. LaMarcus Aldridge hit shots. They win. He misses shots. They lose. He 2 for 11 in the last 3 fourth quarters.
I know
2 for 11.
All too well. Painfully
Skip,
well.
That can't happen. So whatever you say, it goes right out the window if he's missing shots. What if you see your regular old Spurs plays drawn up and somehow, some way on the right wing, on the left wing, LaMarcus Aldridge is right there, either one-on-one where he's unguardable or wide open, and he's just missing shots. What you gonna do?
I'll tell you exactly what you're going to do.
It comes down to that. It comes down to that. Go ahead.
Remember the finals you mentioned in our previous topic in which my Spurs blew LeBron's team off the floor by a record margin, 70 points, by hitting 46% of their threes? Remember Patty Mills and Danny Green and Boris Diaw and Manu Ginobili? They can all still score. I watch them every night. They can get crazy hot. Kawhi can get crazy hot. I think as a collective team, if they just let it fly, instead of playing tentatively as they have, I think, in all 5 games so far, they have tried to out-finesse the Thunder, who have basically just beaten them up physically. Inside, in the end, are you going to let Enes Kanter and Adams just mug you inside? Because that's what happened last night to me. They just threw them out of the way and said, here. David West is going to have to play a little bigger and smarter inside.
He needs to play bigger. Yep. He needs a little bit more minutes. Your boy Boban needs to get a bit more minutes, even if it's at the expense of Tim Duncan.
I agree.
And by the way, Skip, again, the Patty Mills, even though Danny Green has hit some threes, everybody hasn't been open. I mean, Oklahoma City goes out and defends.
They do. They do a good job.
It's almost like they're like willing to give up the 2. Yep. They're willing to take their chances on the 2. By guarding the 3, which is why L.A. LaMarcus Aldridge is that much more important.
Yep.
He's got to hit shots. He's the premier free agent for a reason in the market last summer. They got him for a reason. It's for moments like this, moments like last night, moments like that are coming up in Game 6. If LaMarcus Aldridge does not step up for you, I cannot see them winning this game.
He's got to become a Spur. He's still got too much trailblazer in him. Too much former Portland playoff trailblazer.
Well, let me say this to you. You say too much trailblazer in him. I'm not sure about that because for all of Damian Lillard's struggles, he shows up in fourth quarters.
Well, sometimes he did. Remember Game 2 back in Oakland, he went 0 for 3 in the fourth quarter. I'm
talking pivotal moments. No. I'm talking pivotal moments. Your season's on the line, et cetera, et cetera. Damian Lillard usually shows up.
Yeah.
I can't sit there and say it's a trailblazer thing. It's a LaMarcus Aldridge thing.
Okay, but how many times when LaMarcus was the best trailblazer did they just come and go quietly in the playoffs? That's my point.
Because they were throwing the ball to him.
Okay, but I'm just saying this is a new stage and a new world, and all of a sudden, remember, he starts off 33 out of 44 in the first 2 games. That's unconscious hot. Remember, he would just turn around and be automatic from 15 feet, 18 feet. Well, all of a sudden, the stakes started to rise, the spotlight got a little brighter, the stage got bigger, and all of a sudden it's pivotal Game 5 at home. Where are you, L.A.? You're in La La Land. That's where you are.
Well, let's be clear about what we're saying about LaMarcus Aldridge so people don't get ultra-sensitive and feel like he's disrespected. This guy is a big-time talent. LaMarcus Aldridge can play the game of basketball, but it is time that you show that in moments like this. You ain't in Portland anymore. You're with a franchise with a championship pedigree in the San Antonio Spurs. This is who you are. This is the moment that you've been waiting for. LaMarcus Aldridge has to show up and live up to what his talent demands because he has the the talent.
Okay, so I'm hearing bottom line, you have Oklahoma City winning big tomorrow night, right?
No, not at all. I think it'll be a tight game either way. But I think San Antonio wins a Game 7. I just don't think it gets there. I'm thinking Oklahoma City. I just sense, Skip, that they may close the door on my pick of San Antonio in 7 may be wrong because I don't know if it's going to get there right now.
You'd
if I had to
celebrate.
bet my money, I would go with OKC the way they're looking right now.
All right, Skip's hanging on. That tomorrow night, pivotal moment, L.A. can show up for sure. Game 6 of the Western Conference semifinals at the Thunderdome between OKC and San Antonio. Our coverage begins with NBA Countdown charged by Dew. That tips at 7:30 Eastern on ESPN. Meanwhile, the San Francisco Chronicle kept it simple with the headline, unanimous. But Tracy McGrady thinks he knows why Steph Curry became the first unanimous winner. We'll react to that next.